everyone, it is Mike here from AutoGuide, and I have Kyle with me, and today we are going to talk about underrated cars. Well, underrated vehicles, I guess.
Yeah.
Cars that, as Rodney Dangerfield said, just don't get any respect. Well, they get some, but we both feel not enough people are giving them the credit they deserve, or the sales they deserve, or the attention, whatever, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So we each have 5 selections that we're going to go through here. We both may not fully agree with each other's, and we'll let each other know that as we go through them.
Yes, although I know that there's at least one that I think we both agree on.
I think there's a lot we probably both agree on, but there's probably one or two each that we don't. But anyway, we will start the list. I guess I'll go first since I'm talking. So my first one is something that's fresh in mind because I literally gave it back yesterday. Full video coming next week. And that is the Mercedes CLA. And although I specifically had the CLA 45S, which is like a complete animal on its own, I put this down to the whole vehicle because a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, it's the little Mercedes, the front drive Mercedes, the fake Mercedes. And it's like, Audi's been doing this for years, and even BMW does it. So I think that isn't, I think that's a little harsh on Mercedes. I mean, the GLA, the A, the CLA, everyone has one of those platforms now. And the A250 front wheel drive in the US is quite affordable. Like, it's cutting into like some high-end compact mainstream cars almost. It's a good deal. And then the 45S is just insane. 416 horsepower out of a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with nothing else. No hybrid, no fancy electrics doing it. Like, when I grew up, I'm old, but even when I was in my 20s, that was the height of the Evo and STI in North America days. And everyone was like, 300 horsepower out of a 2-liter or 2.5-liter. Like, that's insane. This 2-liter is making 416. Like, I looked it up. There's, I think, 8 cars on sale technically that make more power per liter. And they're all like 7-figure supercars pretty much.
Yeah. And I feel like I remember that era too. And Europe got these special edition Evos that were like the FQ 400 or whatever, and they barely had warranties because you're turning that 2-liter up to 400 horsepower, and it's like now it's in a Mercedes.
Black smoke coming out, black smoke pouring out of the exhaust too.
Yeah,
because that's how they got around it. It was like I think it was because they could go through like Cosworth or somewhere and get around it. But yeah, it's in a Mercedes with a full warranty that when you put in comfort mode, it just drives like a regular CLA. Like, it's crazy.
So as someone who has driven a regular CLA and a class sedan before it was killed, RIP, and the hatchback.
The hatchback for sure.
The CLA 45 does not ride like a regular CLA.
So I meant in the sense the engine and transmission. Like, you wouldn't know you're in this high-strung car boosted to an inch of its life. No, you're right. I said in my review the 3 suspension settings are Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus, but they're really like stiffest. It is pretty hard riding, but yeah, I just don't think it gets the credit because it's the smallest, most affordable full AMG. Like, I'm not talking 35s and 53s and 43s that are like warmed over. Like, it has a lot of performance and it's a crazy car, but its biggest competitor in terms of size, price, and power is the Audi RS3. And that thing's regarded as this like crazy hallmark of a sport compact supercar. And it's like, the Mercedes makes more power from a smaller engine, and so I just don't think it gets what it deserves.
Okay, fair enough. I have thoughts on that, but I mean, we have 9 other cars, so we can can get going. Okay, so I guess I should go next then.
Sure.
All right. Well, my first pick is also German, and it's one that both of us have driven recently, though we haven't driven the newest one, but I'm sure we'll fix that this year. The Volkswagen Jetta GLI.
Mm-hmm.
That is my underrated car, although I feel like increasingly it's becoming less so because it's becoming more obvious as a affordable, compact, sport bargain, right? Like, the GLI is basically a smarter Civic Si.
Yeah, it's sort of what the GTI was to those cars, but if you want to go up a class, it's like the Golf R to the Civic Type R. It's not as raw as the Civic Si, but it's way more livable, more powerful. I really love the car too. It's priced about the same, and it makes more power than the Civic Si or I mean, there's no other cars kind of in that category. The Forte GT is dead.
No,
So-
and it's spacious. Like the thing that makes the GLI so great is that it's based on the Jetta, and the Jetta itself. I could almost go the same way as you, Mike, and say that the entire Jetta range is underrated, but the
Yeah.
GLI in particular, because more than the CLA, if you drive the GLI in its regular modes, it's really not anything different, not too different than a torquier Jetta. That's what makes it so great in my mind, is that it's so easy to live with. The infotainment's pretty easy to use. We'll have to see how this facelifted one goes. There's lots of space. It's comfortable. I think it looks pretty good. The styling's always been a little fussy, but I mean, I guess you could say it at least stands out more than a Civic.
Calling any Volkswagen styling fussy with how conservative they are. I know what you mean compared to regular Jetta, yes, with the two-tone accents and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, unlike an SI, it has an automatic option, which, as much as that's not what I'd pick, it goes a long way to broaden the appeal of the vehicle. So
It's true.
that's a great one. I think I will stick with front-wheel drive bias sedans and go with one that we may not disagree with, and that's the Acura TLX, specifically the Type S. I am keeping this locked into just the Type S. Now, first, it's the way it drives. For a car that has its engine pointed sideways in the front, it's crazy how much power can go to the rear wheels and how well the super handling all-wheel drive actually does what it's supposed to. And if you hammer through a corner and really give it gas, you can feel that outside rear tire just trying to push the car and turn it around through the corner, like a rear-wheel drive car of that class could, like a 340 or a I don't know what they are, C43, C450, I don't know what they call them anymore. But yeah, and it's way cheaper. It's like the price of a regular car. So that's mine. I know you don't like it as much, but every time I drive one, I'm just like, this is fun.
The thing for me, I don't think you've driven a Genesis G70 V6 recently, have you?
No, I have. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because for me, that's always the tough one, is that does what I want the TLX to do.
Yes, but I can't put my family in a G70. It is tiny inside.
So what's the TLX inside?
No, it's like an Accord. The G70, I love driving it too, but even I barely fit in it. I don't know. It's just something with maybe the way I like to sit, but it is a fun car, and it is also low priced. But yeah, I just think the TLX. I'm not saying it's the best in the class, because it's not, but it doesn't get in the conversation, which I think it should.
That's fair. And it is one sharp-looking sedan. I will give them that.
Yeah, it was just crazy, because 10, 15 years ago, Acura did not make good-looking sedans.
No, but they do now. All right, well, fair enough. If we're going to stick with controversial sedan picks, my next one should probably apply. The Subaru WRX. And it feels...
I would agree. I'm all on there. Well, I just feel it's not underrated, but I'm all on it with you.
I feel like it's underrated because it's kind of stood still, right? Like, we've seen these hot hatches grow up, like the Type R, the GR Corolla especially, and they've kind of taken the spotlight. But when we drove the WRX, I can't remember which two letters it was in the summer. TS, TR, RS. It definitely wasn't an STI.
It wasn't it was the RS in Canada, TR in the US, I think.
Okay. Yes. So when we drove that last summer against a GR Corolla, I mean, yes, the GR Corolla is better in just about every way, although the WRX is weirdly more livable to ride along in every day.
And sit in the back.
Yeah, the WRX is so much more affordable, and I think that's the thing that, in my mind, kind of redeems the WRX. And people keep ragging on the cladding, but it's been a few years now. I'm kind of used to it. I feel like it's a pretty good car if you want something that's affordable, but feels like you don't have to baby it. And crucially, the WRX works better the harder you work it.
Yeah, it likes getting beat on. That segment is kind of on its own, because all the other ones have gone to where the STI used to be, and that was sort of as part of why Subaru discontinued it. I mean, it's more than just price, but they're expensive and they have a small market. They have good sales down where they are, and people. I know some people say, "Why don't you get a Elantra N for the same price?" Well, they're two very different vehicles. Although the power is similar and the size is similar, like the Elantra N's a track weapon that is not fun on everyday life, whereas the WRX is not a track weapon. But if it's snowing, raining, whatever, dirt roads, it's still fun to drive. So yeah, very different vehicles. I can't even think what the closest thing to it is anymore. Like the GTI has always kind of been a competitor, but a different drivetrain, and the Civic Si never really kind of got up to that level. So yeah, I agree with that. I get your points as to why it's underrated. I am going to I'll take a break from the sedans for one round. This one is actually submitted by Greg, our boss in charge that we love discussing cars with. And when he said this, I was like, oh yeah, that totally is, because I had one last year and I fully agree. That's the Honda Ridgeline. It's a lot like the CLA, where it's just got this stigma of, oh, it's not a real truck because it's front drive. It's not this, it's not that. You know what? It isn't a real truck because it drives like a car, and it drives so much better. And I would wager anyone who has a truck that doesn't tow a 10,000 plus trailer or have to climb a mountain is probably all they need 99% of the time. Its payload, its towing capacity, like it's good. And inside it's like a Passport or a Pilot. Like it's just your regular SUV inside.
Yeah.
So,
although it's the previous generation ones.
Yeah, it's waiting for its update. But I mean, obviously it's coming with the other two updated. I'd say this year's probably the sort of the order they usually go: Pilot, Passport, then Ridgeline. It's just, if I was to get a truck, I don't need a big truck because of the stuff I do. I would tow a boat. I would need the bed for some house stuff. So yeah, like that Maverick, like that's the right spot. Even against like a Ranger, again, I see the appeal if you need to beat on your truck to get the Ranger, but otherwise, like if you live in a city, get the Ridgeline.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, although with a fairly big caveat that I've actually never driven a Ridgeline. I've only ridden along in them, so it's a blind spot for me. But I'm right there with you. I'm in the choir. I almost picked the Santa Cruz from Hyundai as one of my underrated ones for very similar reasons. But I guess I'll move it along and go to my next one, which is very different, and it's the BMW i4. And I realize that a car that just recently won Canadian Electric Vehicle of the Year probably isn't underrated, but hear me out. So a little bit of background. I was at the Toronto show recently and watching people pile into that car all the time. And one of the main appeals is that it looks just like a regular BMW, right? It's an i4. It's an electric car that doesn't shout that it's an electric car. In Canada, it also has the unique advantage of being one of the only rear drive ones you can still get. Everything else is X-Drive all the time, and in America you can still get some models as rear drive still. But the i4 is kind of the modern take on what we all remember the classic BMW format being, right? It's a Grand Coupe, so it's 4 doors, so it's pretty practical. It's a hatchback, so it's even more practical. And then it's rear drive, and it's fun and punchy, and it's a pretty nice size package. It's fairly affordable in the luxury world. I think it's a really good car, and I'd argue it's the best 3 Series derivative.
It's bold words, especially
yeah.
Regular one, I assume, not like an M3 CS or something.
Yeah. I'm not counting the full M's.
But yeah, that's what I think. I agree. It's a little underrated because not even for what you're saying, but the philosophy. It is a 4 Series or 3 Series. I mean, it's a 4 Grand Coupe that just happens to be electric. Whereas Mercedes and Audi and a lot of other luxury makers were like making their EVs different names and completely different styling and like a whole different brand. And as we are witnessing, that isn't really working. And BMW's doing pretty well with their i vehicles. I mean, their iX and XM are a little out there, but their cars aren't. So yeah, that's a good one. My second last one is actually in the luxury segment too, and it's one I've talked about on this show to death, so no one's going to be surprised here, and that's the Cadillac CT5. But I am including the entire range, not just the Blackwing. And you know what? I almost would disclude the Blackwing because although to general people they don't know what it is, anyone who's into cars knows what it is and knows like how crazy it is and how good it is. But I don't think the regular CT5 gets enough credit. And this goes back to what we were talking about with the G70 and the TLX. It can rival the BMWs and Mercedes, I think, trim to trim, if you really put them together. I'm not saying it's the better one, but even the entry 4-cylinder, although the power numbers are way down compared to the Germans, it's also cheaper. And it's the same size, yet the engine feels way more powerful than the numbers suggest, like the Germans do. And I mean, you look at the 0 to 60 is officially quoted, and yes, they're slightly off, but you wouldn't notice. And you know what? There's a twin turbo V6 if you want as well in the I think the premium or the V, and then of course there's the supercharged V8 and the Blackwing V. It's just Cadillacs progress and evolve so well with their sedans. They are on par with the Germans, but I think it just took so long, and there's just such a, I don't know, stigma against them that people aren't giving them the credit they deserve. And I mean, it could stretch to the CT4 as well.
Yeah, okay. I haven't driven either of those since the facelifts. I think my one major issue with them would be that they're a little noisy compared to the Germans. I mean, compared to the Mercedes, especially. But maybe that would be the argument.
Thumb toggles on the Cadillacs, so it wins back.
Maybe the argument is, maybe people expect more luxury and less sport from Cadillac. But I mean, that's a weird thing because for the last 25 years, Cadillac has built this sport personality, and I think it does it really well, right? Like for Escalade, that's a whole different idea than what Blackwing or even regular Vs are.
Let's not talk about the XT6, but the other models.
Ooh, yeah. All right, well, fair enough. I mean, I wish I would have driven it, and I wish we could have put it up against that E-Class that I had around the same time, so we could have really seen what they were all about. But okay. So I'm going to move back to something a little more affordable, still sedan biased. We seem to have a lot of them on this list. But for me, it is the Nissan Sentra. And I'm going to preface that by saying it's underrated, but it is not the best car in its class. I fully acknowledge that. But the Sentra is still pretty affordable, where a lot of the class is now just moving higher up. And the fundamentals are there. I think if you need a no-fuss, straightforward compact car for commuting, the Sentra does it. And in certain trims, it can actually be a little fun. Now, Canadians have an advantage because you can still get a manual on the SR trim in 2025, which is kind of shocking because I think that makes it the only manual regular model.
They brought it out for the SR. Remember, it was like the S only, and it was like a 5-speed base. Now the SR gets like a proper 6-speed. It is like on the surface, you're like, what? But I get what you're saying, especially you can get high trims, and it only comes with one engine, which is slow. But that's fine because a lot of competitors, they have the upgrade engines, which we want more and we appreciate, but it also drives price up. The only thing I think the biggest knock against the Sentra and the value play is the existence of the Versa, because it's pretty big and cheaper, but it's not nearly as nice of a car.
That is my major point. Is like the SR, the Sentra, it's one of the better looking cars in its class, I would say. It has a nice low nose. It has good colors available. I think it's a underrated choice, and also, I mean, it's the only one that's used as a basis for a one-make racing series these days, so that's got to count for something.
I think it's one of those cars too would get more respect and be in more people's minds if it had a halo, and I still don't know to this day why Nissan didn't put the 1.6 turbo or something, or even now the new 3-cylinder turbo, something in the SR. Even if you sell a handful, it gets people recognizing the Sentra and in it. But
yep.
I mean, they're making lots of money, so I guess I don't know.
Are they?
So, moving on to my last pick, I am changing the rules because I made them, and I'm not picking a car. I am picking an entire segment, and that is one that I'm fresh in mind because I'm editing a video for it, and that is minivans. Minivans do not get the respect they deserve today. People will still call them soccer mom cars or, family vehicles, this and that. Like, not in a good way, family vehicle. Yeah, minivan is better on gas, probably, well, maybe not more affordable, but better on gas, way more spacious, way more capable of hauling people and gear at the same time because of its giant trunk than any 3-row SUV. And I mean that like any. Like, Get an Odyssey, a Sienna, Carnival. They all have those dugout trunks where the seats can fold in flat. An SUV can't because they have to be all-wheel drive. And even Toyota has an all-wheel drive extra motor back there, and they still do it. And they drive so much better. Like, yeah, I don't need a minivan. I have one child and a small dog. But if I had 3 kids, like, it would make your life so much easier than getting a 3-row SUV, especially when they're little, because sliding doors in parking spaces change your life.
Yep. I have a friend who was just looking at a minivan, and they were happy for what you just mentioned, but also as a happy bonus, their kid even liked the sliding doors, right? Because they like that they can open that and it slides out for them. They don't have to worry about it closing. It's so much better. I'm happy. I heard someone telling me the other day that minivan sales are actually on the up, so I think we're hopefully getting past the stigma, because yeah, the whole soccer mom thing is such a outdated kind of insult, but also, I mean, that's what, if you're getting into an SUV, you're doing what literally everyone else is doing anyway. So get a minivan, be a trendsetter.
That's what happens with the auto industry. Everyone had wagons, and they're like, well, my parents drove wagons. I'm getting a minivan. I'm going to be different. Then everyone had minivans, so then our generation's like, we're getting SUVs. Well, maybe our kids will be like, I don't want an SUV. I'm going to get a wagon, minivan, some other space pod we don't even know about yet. Something.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. You know what? And I'll allow it, the change to an entire segment. There's only 4 of them anyway, so you know. My final one is, well, actually a crossover, but it is the second from this brand on this list, the Mercedes-Benz GLB. The second on the same platform, actually. So I'm going to overrule here and say that the GLB is actually the best vehicle on that platform. Because
it's funny that the CLA shares a platform with a 3-row SUV.
Yes. Yeah, it does. But I mean, the Corolla and the Sienna are also technically on the same platform.
Every Subaru is on the same platform except for the BRZ, so I get what you're saying.
So the GLB is... It's always impressed me since I first drove it years ago, where it's boxy cool, right? It kind of looks like a shrunken down, rounded off sibling of a G-Wagon. Mm-hmm. It drives very nicely because it's on a front-based car platform, so it's very easy to drive. It's easy to place. It does have the 3rd row, which is admittedly for kids only. I mean, it says it right on the door jamb, like, do not sit anyone over 5 foot in the 3rd row. But it works so well. It has so much character. You can fit a lot of stuff in it. There is a GLB 35 if you want a very cool, weird hot hatch, kind of like the Mini Clubman, where it was a hot hatch, but not really. And then there's also the EQB, so if you want an EV version. And it, unlike all the other Mercedes EQs, it's actually pretty much the same as its regular gas model. So I think the GLB really deserves a lot more attention than it gets.
When it came out, I thought for sure the GLA was dead because it just made so much more sense. It was like I said, same platform, but more spacious and price about the same. And it allowed the GLC to go a little further up market, which it did. After you said 35, I'm just thinking, oh man, a GLB 45S. That could be like my ultimate car. Just keep that 3rd row folded all the time, and I got a nice big family hauler for my little family.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, that ends this top 10 list of our top 10 most underrated cars. Let us know what you think are underrated cars that maybe we didn't cover and which ones we got wrong, because I'm sure you will say that to us regardless. We will be back with more of these lists down the road. Until then, we will see you later.